Welcome to the Legendary Upside Podcast. My name is Pat Corain. You can follow all of my content at legendaryupside.com. And with me today, Blair Andrews of RotoViz. Blair, how's it going?
It's going great. So excited to be joining you for this and hopefully talking through some of these exciting wide receiver situations and some that have become maybe a little bit less exciting, but still
Yeah,
promising, I will say.
some of the situations we were hoping would be exciting haven't been as excited as we were hoping. We'll get to that. We'll touch on the Broncos, for example. But you've been writing some really great stuff over at RotoViz, not just on receivers, but a lot of the stuff that I want to talk to you about today is on receivers. I just had an article on the site about the rookie receivers going in the double-digit rounds, so kind of got receivers on the mind right now. And yeah, I wanted to, I guess the situation I think is most interesting as we kind of like think about how to play it with like if we're looking for wide receiver breakouts. One of the situations that is the most interesting to me is the Packers, because when you go through some of these articles and you identify potential breakouts, Jaden Reed came up as a guy that you were looking at. You had an article about a receiver that resembles Deebo Samuel on the Packers. Obviously, you're talking about Reed. No, you're talking about Wicks. That's so there we go. So you're in on Dontavian Wicks. You do know ball, but then you talk about the importance of age for these guys when they enter the league really young, still mattering even a few years into their career. Well, that applies to Wicks. It also applies to Romeo Doubs, who's starting on the outside there. And then we do have Christian Watson, who flashed in his rookie season. So we kind of land, like, no matter how you approach it, it feels like everyone sort of lands on the same thing here, including Matt LaFleur, I think, which is that there's just like four good guys in this receiver room, and how is it going to play out? So just, want to get your thoughts on each of those guys individually, and then how you see that situation.
Yeah. I mean, I think at a high level, maybe the biggest takeaway is that Jordan Love is way undervalued and should be going a lot earlier.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, Jaden Reed rather, is probably one of my favorite year two guys. I think of all the players that you look at who are going for that secondary breakout, which is a really powerful thing that I wrote about. Reed is, I think, the cheapest of all of those, despite playing, at least as well as someone like Zay Flowers last year. He was more efficient than Flowers, in fact. So you're looking at a guy who's got probably similar kind of upside to Flowers, but at a 2-3 round discount.
Yeah.
So he's really pretty exciting.
He seems to be falling, if anything. He was in the fifth pretty regularly. Now he's more the sixth.
Yeah, right. And I mean, you see Christian Watson also around that same range. And I mean, when you're comparing those two guys, to me, I don't think there's any, like, Reed should be going several rounds ahead of Watson. And even if you look at Watson as a guy who has that upside he's shown in the past, he's got that touchdown scoring, long play, big play ability. Still, I think you got to be a little bit concerned with his kind of lack of efficiency last year. And obviously some of that was related to injuries. So you don't want to discount that entirely. And there's certainly possibilities for him to kind of come back and really put up a big season.
Yeah, and I think one of the things with Reed that I've struggled with is that he has the profile of a guy who might not run all the routes, right? He's kind of more the slot receiver. He might be used in some designed ways, but maybe he's not always on the field. And so you kind of Deebo-y, I guess, but also there's the Deebo hit is so impressive in certain ways because it really doesn't happen. It's more like this is a sub-package player who's an every down receiver kind of thing. Like that's amazing, but it makes me a little nervous with Reed, where like that's a concern generally. Like that's a concern if it was like him and Watson, and then you're like, oh, they might play some big, non-target earner guy on the outside,
Right.
a Mac Hollins type, and then Reed would still play in the slot because that's kind of the archetype of player. That would be at least a concern.
Sure.
Maybe he would show he can play on the outside in that situation, but this is a very different situation where it's crowded. So that would be like the downside concern for me. But you wrote about these secondary breakouts being a real key to finding league winners at wide receiver. What's the upside case for Reed from that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, from that perspective, you're looking at. Just want to pull up the article, but I mean, you're looking at guys who put up this 200-point season as rookies, and then the next year, the criteria I had in the article was, I think, 38 points, 36, something. It was 2 points a game, basically, improvement in
Okay, yeah.
a year after a breakout. But I mean, you see guys going 100 points over what they did the year before. So I don't want to say you should project Jaden Reed for 300 points in 2024, but that's sort of that's the upside case, I guess you would say, is when you see these guys having really good, really efficient rookie seasons, they can really explode and join kind of the elite ranks of the wide receiver position. So there's definitely a lot to be excited about.
Do you see potentially this like, oh, the Packers receiver room is crowded as like, kind of cover for these breakouts that in retrospect we're going to look and be like, it wasn't really that crowded actually?
Yeah, I kind of do. I think I'm definitely more excited about Reed and Dontavian Wicks than the other guys. So I do think, in a sense, having Watson and Dobbs kind of pulling drafters away with their ADP still high, that's going to keep the prices in check. But by the end of the season, we're at least for Reed, certainly for Reed. I mean, he looks like he's just going to pull way ahead of all the other guys. But yeah, I think we may end up looking back and saying, oh, the signs were there for even a Wicks breakout. We should have taken that more seriously. And Dobbs next year is not even being drafted.
Yeah, Dobbs, I mean, he obviously had that big playoff game.
Yeah.
And has been, able to kind of get out there and earn a role and do some stuff. It's kind of Michael Gallup-y or something,
Right.
And Gallup was fun for that 1 year before he tore his ACL, but it just doesn't have the same like, oh man, this guy could be it. He's just like a good pro.
Right.
And
No.
yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely a case where, just looking at the other guys, like what Wicks did with his after tackle stuff in particular, after the catch stuff is pretty exciting. Dobbs doesn't have quite that kind of flashy profile with the ball in his hands. Reed the same way, kind of. But I mean, yeah, Dobbs, last year he was the guy who was on the field the most for probably the Packers. And he ended up, I think, maybe 13 or 14 fantasy points over expectation. Like, he didn't have a bad season. He was actually decent. So he's certainly someone who you can point to as being undervalued. I think maybe what you're hoping for is somebody who's like getting 80-90% of the snaps in the Packers offense is going to actually earn more targets and put up more production. So that's kind of a disappointing thing from that perspective.
Yeah, Dobbs is tough for me because it does seem like maybe a big miss player in the sense of like you have multiple breakouts that you're fading. And so like,
Right.
Gallup seems fine until CeeDee Lamb goes absolutely nuclear as a superstar. And that's like, actually, this dude's not really doing anything. So that's a little bit of a concern for me with Dobbs. Wicks has been harder for me though. Like Wicks, has rocketed up in ADP. He started in like the 140s in Best Ball Mania on Underdog. And obviously that was way too low. He was kind of universally targeted. If you're doing a podcast in May, or Dontavian Wicks was going to get touted, and rightfully so. But he has moved up now to 113 ADP on Underdog, and I've had a hard time kind of even staying near him in the rankings, where like it feels exuberant to me. I do understand it though. Like it's a frustrating one because like I want to be in. I like the bull case, but like this does seem pricey to me for a guy who's not a starting wide receiver on his own team. Like, I guess talk me back into Dontavian Wicks with this Deebo Samuel-esque profile, and where do you actually think he should be going?
Yeah. So, right. The thesis for Wicks has to involve him getting on the field more, getting more opportunity. Last year, he really only played a lot when Watson was hurt. So that's a problem. And I think the thing that gives you hope for that is that he was just so good when he was on the field, particularly with the ball in his hands. He was good at making plays after the catch, making guys miss, breaking tackles, missed tackles, forced missed tackles. Those kinds of things. This is kind of a I know ball thing, but it's like, coaches.
It's Dontavian Wicks. You're allowed to just
there
say
you go.
ball.
Yeah. I mean, coaches like to see that when you see a guy on the field and he's picking up yardage beyond what you expect, beyond what is blocked, beyond what another receiver might get. So that's, any human is looking at that and saying, oh, well, I got to get the ball in his hands more, hopefully. So that's kind of, I think, the case for him getting more opportunity and then just keeping up that efficiency.
You highlighted his yak score in ESPN's receiver metrics. They've got open score, catch score, yak score, and he had a yak score of 65. Deebo in 2019, it was at 69. So is he basically he was flashing like rookie year Deebo did as a yak producer? Is that the idea?
That's the idea. And obviously from there, Deebo went on and is now like almost always in the 80s and 90s in yak scores. And that's probably not something you want to project for Wicks going forward. I think Deebo is a little bit, he's kind of an outlier in that way, and you shouldn't necessarily expect.
We can drop the kinda.
Yeah, right.
He's just an outlier. Yeah.
So you shouldn't expect Wicks to become Deebo Samuel, but
no.
When you see guys like Samuel who have that good yak score and can then maybe add one more element, like if he could, actually he was better at catch score than Samuel was in his rookie year, I think. But if he could improve the other elements of his game, then you can see him really taking that next step.
And Deebo, I think people think of as like this, and I said he's kind of like gadget player, but the thing that makes Deebo so special is that like he can be used as a gadget player, but when used as a downfield receiver, he's really good.
Right.
Like that is not a problem for him at all. And so Wicks more of like a downfield guy, but the ability to add yards after catch on downfield targets is incredibly valuable.
For sure.
So all right. So like truth serum, let's give you the truth serum here. Where should Wicks go?
Let me see. I mean, where's he going now?
113.
113. Still behind Dobbs.
Yeah, he hasn't flipped Dobbs yet.
I would take him ahead of Dobbs.
Are you taking him ahead of?
I would take him ahead of everyone except Jordan Addison in the 8th round.
So you're taking him above Sutton?
Yes.
Okay. So that is a very different philosophy, right? Like those two players represent very different philosophies of how to get fantasy production.
Sure.
Like Sutton is the targets are locked in, his roles locked in, his routes are locked in. Target competition is honestly much poorer than I was hoping it was. On the other hand, Wicks has extreme target competition and his routes aren't locked in. So like, what is the world in which Dontavian Wicks outscores Courtland Sutton? Like, can you paint that picture for me? Because I honestly am having trouble seeing that. I would like to see it though.
Yeah, and this probably segues into our Denver wide receiver discussion because Sutton, I think the community as a whole, and including me, tends to be overconfident on things like locked in targets, locked in routes. And if that's where, if you're going to be wrong about a player, it's probably on that side, that you think his role is more secure than it actually is. So that's kind of how I'm approaching Sutton, that actually Mims is really good. He's another, second year breakout candidate I think Troy Franklin is still really good, even though he's not getting the buzz you would hope even during prime puff piece season. So
Yeah, the puff piece, they have not come. They've been on another guy, Bealey
right.
or Beal.
Yeah. So it's partly my kind of maybe you'd call it confidence, maybe just kind of plugging my ears and la la la. I'm not listening to that. Troy Franklin's actually good. Mims is actually good. Cortland Sutton is going to lose targets to these.
Yeah, although I mean, I would say
breakout
if I'm
candidates.
making the Sutton case, like, and I'm not really that into Sutton, but it's, I understand why he goes where he does, because it's not really even that he's competing with those guys. It's that, like, he's sitting here as the number one in routes and targets.
Yeah.
And behind him are Tim Patrick and
Yeah.
Josh Reynolds. So, like, those guys are cover for him for Mims and Franklin. Like, Mims and Franklin have work to do just to get past those guys for routes. And then they have to start challenging Sutton for targets. So, like, at a minimum, I think we're looking at a pretty productive early half of the season for Sutton, as like a bull case for Franklin at this point would be down the stretch he's going to have a role. But I don't see, I mean, there's just, you don't have a camp this quiet and then start producing in week 3. I don't think. I would like it, but I don't think it's happening. So that's where I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's more of a Sutton thing. I guess I'm more curious about the Wicks. Like, how does Wicks do this?
Yeah.
He's got it. Is he displacing Watson? Is he displacing Dobbs? Like, how is he actually on the field? Is it injury? Is it just like, I don't know, but this dude's so talented that, like, he'll kind of find a way to grow in this barren wasteland of target competition?
It's maybe a little bit of that, but I think more I am expecting that as the season goes on, he'll be displacing Dobbs and particularly Watson.
Okay.
I think that Watson's job is actually maybe the most in jeopardy in terms of his kind of the security of his routes and targets.
I could definitely see that with the injury prone stuff as well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's true. And then, so there is definitely some contingent upside to Wicks as well that I think you have to factor in.
The contingent upside with him is actually, like, what keeps me up at night as someone who doesn't actually have a lot since he rocketed up in price. I've got some early Wicks teams, but not many since he jumped up 30 picks. The contingent value is just there. Like, that's right. There's no counter argument, I don't think, unless you're just out on the player. Like, if he is out on the field 80% of the time, like, yeah, I'm in.
Which he was in those, like, from week 14 on when Watson was hurt. Wicks was the guy, I think, like close to 80% snap share a couple weeks. Okay, 78 at its highest, but still.
I'll take it. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So I'm definitely bullish on Wicks, and I'm bearish on Watson to stay healthy. But even if he is healthy, I think I'm a little bearish on kind of his ability to hold that job.
Okay, going back to the Broncos, like,
yeah.
Are you taking either of Mims or Franklin? Because you had written up so just for people who don't know, both of us are big Franklin prospect guys. We both really liked his prospect profile. It's a little bit, I would say his prospect profile is definitely, like, concerning from a boom bust perspective of Troy Franklin did a thing in college, which is very valuable in the NFL, which is, he's fast and he gets downfield and he wins on deep routes.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is that he's really undersized.
Yeah.
He's one of these guys, like, when I was, like, watching him, I was like, this dude's skinny. Like, it was like, jumped off my wife was like, this guy's really skinny.
Yeah.
He is strikingly skinny. And honestly, to the point I should have probably factored factor that in, that maybe the NFL would not have, the NFL would have trouble envisioning him winning at that level at the same way he did in college. So he's either going to be able to do what he did in college, and he'll be good if he can, because that's a valuable thing, or it won't translate. And then he doesn't really have a backup. And we've seen guys, he's taller than a KJ Hamler, but it's kind of KJ Hamler-y in that way. Like, it's either going to work or it doesn't work. And Paul Richardson was a guy like this. Like, it's like there's some of these like undersized deep threats. It just doesn't really translate. And then it's like, that's it. It sounds like maybe it's not translating from camp. And so I'm starting to, I'm not really taking Franklin now at all. I have plenty of Franklin from earlier in the offseason, so I would be delighted if he turns into something. But do you still have hope that he eventually emerges?
I definitely still have hope. I think when, I wrote him up earlier in the season as one of these guys who checks all the boxes, and that was a little bit disingenuous, of course, because there's one major box that he doesn't check.
Draft capital.
Well, yeah, that draft capital is a big one, but the size, as you mentioned, is another one. So I guess there are a couple boxes. So yeah, certainly you've seen guys who are able to win at the NFL level at 170 whatever pounds, but usually they're, Deshaun Jackson, they're super fast, which unfortunately he was only adequate.
Yeah. For a deep threat, he was adequate. Yeah.
So that's definitely concerning. And I think you have to kind of look at his fall in ADP and kind of the camp reports in that light and say, okay, there was always this chance that he just doesn't have, the speed he needs at his size to compete. It's a different game running against NFL cornerbacks versus college cornerbacks. But that said, what he was able to do in college is just pretty incredible. And the signal we get from college production, is typically a lot stronger than what we get from the athleticism factor. So I still want to be kind of in on Franklin, just because I think there is still a decent chance he's able to translate that production to the NFL level.
With his profile, one thing we have with Frank, like one of the bull signals we have on Franklin is that he was an early declare. It's a younger prospect. He, the profile, just to give people a quick rundown. He had a 31% dominator rating last season at age 20. That was with a 31% yardage share, 32% touchdown share. He almost had the 30% dominator rating breakout in 2022, at 27% at 19 years old. So this dude, and if you're using the 20% threshold, then that 19-year-old breakout there. So
yeah,
that's obviously really exciting. He also had 2.93 yards per team attempt last season. So we're getting really strong efficiency with Franklin as well. And that's where, I really do think that like Troy Franklin is an excellent deep threat at the college level. Can he be a deep threat at the NFL level, given the size concerns, is really, and it's kind of binary in that way. Like it either translates or it doesn't.
Right.
To kind of say that again, 3.32 yards per route run last year with Oregon. Like that's an elite number. That's a really, really exciting number. So, and as an underclassman, there's a lot of reason to think that the ceiling's actually kind of sneaky high if he kind of meets the threshold of being able to do it. But does he meet that threshold? And when does he meet it, if he does meet it? Is there anything to you where like this dude was a 3-year guy, younger prospect, broke out at 20? Maybe it takes him a year or two to like put on weight or something like that?
Yeah, that's possible. And one thing, obviously you don't want to have to be this patient, but you do see in my breakout stuff that there are guys who, hang around the league for a long time and break out year 5 And
oh no.
yeah, right. Oh, that would be, oh no. I mean, hopefully you've given up by then, but I mean, it is mostly players who were really young rookies who
Right.
end up going that route. That's, I mean, that's not the worst case scenario for Franklin, but it would be pretty bad for those of us who are drafting a lot of him this year. So yeah, there is maybe something to the idea that younger rookies take a little bit longer to break out in the NFL. On the other hand, like
Not always.
21-year-old,
We get huge hits right away from these guys.
exactly. And in fact, it's the 21-year-old rookies who have the highest breakout rate of any experience age combo. So really, if you're trying to say, well, based on his profile, when's the most likely year for him to break out? It's this year.
Right. There would be more reason to leave the light on because he's so young. And you note this in some of your stuff that like we actually do want to go remind ourselves who was 21 when they came in the league. Marvin Mims was 21 when he came in the league, right?
Yep.
So are you still, I mean, this is weird. There's like, it's frustrating that we have these two guys that we have two cracks here for a really exciting breakout and they both seem to be flopping. Are you optimistic at all that we get something from Mims this year still?
I'm definitely optimistic on Mims. I mean, his usage last year was just weird, where he comes out and has like these two awesome games earlier in the season and then basically isn't on the field anymore. I don't completely know what to make of that. I think Sean Payton's explanation that he was kind of blocked by Jeudy is maybe a little bit satisfying, not entirely though.
It was until he then got blocked by Tim Patrick.
Well, right. Made
it less satisfying.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what to make of Tim Patrick either. I'm kind of not yet a believer that that's going to be a real thing when the regular season starts. But yeah, I'm optimistic for Mims. I'm still drafting him. I think he fits another really promising breakout profile where you have the 21-year-old rookie going into year 2 with now a new path to opportunity, hopefully.
Right. We might need a bigger path, unfortunately. I thought it was about as big as you could get, but it doesn't seem big enough.
Yeah, right. I mean, and the other thing, of course, is that, and this kind of goes back to, Sutton's job security as well, is that Sean Payton loves to run these offenses where they funnel targets to the running backs. And there are a lot of good receiving running backs in Denver. And Bo Nix kind of fits that Drew Brees profile. I mean, a lot lower down in terms of skill level, but,
I think the answer might be Jaleel McLaughlin, to be honest.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk through some of these open score superstars that you profiled here. So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is that I really liked this article, and I just love I look at open score a fair amount, and I haven't seen like a ton of other people writing about it, and I just love the way that you framed this, where you're like, let me look at guys who are succeeding in one of these metrics. There's 3 metrics that make up this overall score on the ESPN receiver metrics. It's all free, by the way. I believe it's, if you Google ESPN RTMs, it'll come up. But it's they've got open score, catch score, and yak score, and then they blend them into an overall score. And you were looking at guys who had a down season in one of these, but then we know that the open score is the most sticky. So if you can find a guy who had like a terrible catch score, but he was awesome in open score, in 2021, this is exactly what we got with AJ Brown. He had a catch score of 36, yak score 53, which is, whatever. Catch score 36 is pretty bad. This is out of 0-100. Open score 99. That's a nice spot to be able to bet, right, on a guy to basically benefit from positive variance kind of going in his direction when you get the stickier element of this dude gets open at an elite rate. What if he catches the ball a little bit more frequently? The ball bounces his way a little bit more. And so identifying guys this year that we can potentially benefit from in that same type of way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess anything you want to say just on the methodology here.
No, yeah, you got that right. I think the catch score in particular is one that looks pretty random from year to year. So you have, like you said, AJ Brown in 2021, his catch score was 36. In 2023, it's 90. He's one of the best at catching the ball in 2023, even though just 2 years before that, he was one of the worst. So,
right.
So yeah, that's something that there seems to be a lot of variance in that corrects a lot of the time. Versus open score, which, it's based on the player tracking similar to the NFL next gen stuff, but I'm pretty sure they're doing this tracking on every route they run, not only on target routes.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're getting, a massive amount of data that we're not seeing on a lot of the other.
And they can use stuff like body positioning
Yep.
as well. So it's not a separation metric.
Right.
It's an idea of kind of like what counts as open is different on different types of routes, different types of situations. What a deep route open is not the same as what it would mean to be open 3 yards downfield.
Right. Yeah. Right. So it's not, penalizing players who run short routes and don't get open because the timing of the play doesn't give them that opportunity. So yeah, it's kind of agnostic. We're not agnostic, but it adjusts for that stuff.
It adjusts for that stuff. They also can factor in the speed of the player versus the speed of the defender. So if if a guy is going slightly faster than his defender and he's running a go route, he's open.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Yeah. It's a pretty cool metric.
It is cool.
I would just say real quick on that, because sometimes people, kind of challenge the findings of these metrics.
Yeah.
I think fundamentally these are stats. They're not it's not the truth of how open a guy can get.
Right.
And that's why to this methodology, we can use the stats to basically bet against them. We're betting against the catch score of 36,
right?
Because it's a stat with a lot of noise in it.
Right.
In the same way that yards per route run, people don't get up in arms about how many yards someone has as being that doesn't reflect how good he is. It's just a fact. He just had this many yards, and they have a methodology, and then the players kind of get scored within that methodology. It reflects what they did in a small sample.
Right.
So it is,
and I think
it's a stat. It is not a rating of how good a route runner someone is.
Right. Exactly. It's not like a PFF score in that it's based on film and what you're seeing. Although actually, I don't know how those are calculated.
I kind of think those are stats too. I think all of these are basically stats.
They might
be someone did in a sample.
Right.
Yeah.
The open score, at least the way I understand it, they are measuring separation, but they're not only just counting.
Not only separation.
Right. They're not just counting the number, 3 feet of separation. It's basic against, or it's based around all the other factors that go into it. So how much separation you would expect a guy to get on this route when the players are in these places.
Yes.
All of that stuff. So it's not, like you said, it's not like some guy watching film and say, oh, he did a good job getting open there. We'll give that 100.
Right.
It's
right.
It is actually, there's data behind it that goes into these scores. Yeah. I mean, and the other thing that I think is important to note, at least about open score, is that it tracks pretty well with stats that we like to look at anyway to kind of tell us how good people are getting open, like targets per route run is something that you kind of point to as a target earning stat. Like if you're able to earn a target when you're running a route, you're probably getting open at a high rate. And open score correlates pretty well with that. So it does match up with not only kind of your intuition about who's good at getting open, but also with what the actual different kinds of data are telling us.
I do think that it's not if I have a gripe with open score, I don't think it has kind of the timing element baked into it where you're here, you reached a spot at the exact right second you're supposed to reach it for this play.
Yeah.
And maybe the guy's kind of real close to you and you didn't really get any separation, but you're there now. And that's where the timing of the plays depend. And I'm thinking about Cooper Kupp here. I'm thinking about Puka Nacua a little bit here. Neither of these guys have done really all that well in open score. Kupp's never really been that great at it. And sometimes looks pretty bad in open score. And so I think there might be, just as someone who's looked at the metric a lot, I think that might be kind of a missing component of like what's being baked into it, and something that I kind of make a mental note of with these guys. Like, I think a dude's like got the mind. If you're betting on mind meld, that might not show up in open score.
Yeah, that's good to know. That's a good point. Yeah, I think that's probably right, because it's not adjusting for being like on the same page with the quarterback and knowing I'm going to get this target no matter how close the guy is to me. Just
right. Yeah.
That's how it works.
I need to be here. Yeah, exactly. Like the timing, the getting to the place on time element of it. Like we don't, and the metric doesn't know that. They don't know, what the exact timing of the play is supposed to look like. So that's a blind spot, I think, in the metric. One of the guys who I would say we're hoping achieves that level of mind meld is Garrett Wilson. Right? We want Garrett Wilson to be the Devontae Adams, just we know exactly where you're going to be, and I'm going to hit you, for a bunch of touchdowns in the end zone, from Aaron Rodgers. He's taking that Devontae Adams mantle. The nice thing, though, is that Garrett Wilson is awesome in open score. So we don't even necessarily need the mind meld to be leaning on here. I mean, he had 77 open score in 2022, 82 in 2023. But it's not 99. It's not the AJ Brown setup where he was 99 and we get the 36 catch score. But he was 82 in open score last year and 32 in catch score and 41 in yak score. So we actually get a pretty clean setup here on Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, and in fact, you can look back at 22 and see that he was better in catch score that year. 54 is, around the average, around median, a little bit better. But even just a slight bump in catch score back to what he did in 2022 would boost him quite a bit in terms of his productivity. So, and the yak score as well, slightly below average. That one's a little bit stickier than catch score, but still not close to open score. So yeah, these guys like Garrett Wilson, who are good at getting open, who will have an improved quarterback situation in the upcoming season, are looking like good bets to improve the other elements of their game, either the catch score or the yak score, and make a big jump. One thing I noted, and it's relevant for Garrett Wilson, is that when you look at some of these guys, like AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs is another guy, they had the elite open scores, but it wasn't until they actually moved to a different team that the catch score and yak score started to catch up. And obviously that's not happening with Wilson, but he is having a huge, exactly, big upgrade in terms of quarterback. So I think the situation is right for him to take a big step there.
So Wilson is going on underdog behind AJ Brown. And to me, that has never, I don't want to do that. I don't want to take AJ Brown over him. I want to take Wilson, but on underdog, I know I can get Jalen Hurts in the 4th round a lot, and I love that stack. So I actually have been taking AJ Brown over him a decent amount, but it's leading to the situation where I'm like, honestly, I'm really happy that this knee sack burst in, for Puka, because I was taking Puka over him too, and now you don't have to do that. If you're at 10, you can take Wilson. But Wilson doesn't really fall, so I'm still just kind of getting, I guess I need to take him over AJ Brown if I'm going to get overweight. I assume you're doing that. Are you doing that?
I am doing that. I'm probably taking Wilson, I mean, you have a tier break kind of after Bijan, and Wilson is basically the next guy for me.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. I mean, that from a betting on the player perspective, I would rather bet on Wilson than Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah. But man, that AJ Brown stack, it's pretty fun.
Yeah. I mean, you can get Aaron Rodgers a lot cheaper.
That's true. That's true. You can get Aaron Rodgers cheaper. Let's see. So I mean, I know Ben Gretch has, he's like talking Garrett Wilson above Amon-Ra, he's floated Wilson above Jefferson at one point. Are you, it sounds like you're still taking Amon-Ra and the running backs over him though?
Sometimes I will take Garrett Wilson ahead of Breece Hall and Bijan and Justin Jefferson in maybe not an underdog, but in other contexts where I'm not going to have as many teams in that format.
get your guys kind of thing.
Right. I think Amon-Ra is somebody that, even though I'm expecting, like another kind of a secondary breakout from Gibbs, a secondary breakout from Laporta, still I think Amon-Ra is a guy you could point to as being like a top 3 receiver. So I don't know that I'd have Wilson quite ahead of him, but yeah, I do like Wilson as maybe a top 6 pick this year, depending on the format.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where, like, at the end of the year, we're gonna look back and if Wilson hits what we think he can be, it's just gonna be like the excuses just aren't gonna hold up.
Yeah.
Like you just needed more Wilson.
Right.
Like you couldn't find a way to get more Wilson. Like you could have found a way to get more Wilson,
Yeah.
So it's just like, do you believe that he's gonna be this emergent superstar? And if you do, I think you just have to get more. And I'm really just talking to myself right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously you can look at the kind of quarterback situation with Jefferson and tell yourself he probably is having a down year with Sam Darnold. Maybe that's not even true. Maybe Jefferson is good enough to transcend that. I think it probably could be, but still there's some risk there that could lead you to say Wilson's a better bet, a safer bet even than Jefferson, which is kind of weird to say, but I think you can easily make a case that you might prefer Wilson's situation over Jefferson's.
Well, definitely situational.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. Maybe you could even talk me into Wilson over Jamar Chase.
Wow. All right. I like how we started with, I'd probably take the running backs and ended with, actually, I think I'll take him 104.
Right. By the end of this pod, he's going to be 101.
Yeah, I know. I got to move this on to Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers, another one of these guys, 76 in open score. The costly fumble score, he was quite poor in.
Yeah.
I've struggled with the lack of enthusiasm for the Ravens this offseason. I don't really get it. Kyle Dvorchak just told me this morning that he's working on an article for the Ravens where he's on board with the thesis I'm about to lay out and actually found kind of additional evidence for this idea. But the thesis is Todd Monken is what we wanted him to be.
Yeah.
He's willing to play fast. He's willing to pass.
Right.
But they didn't need to in a ton of situations because their defense was elite. Yeah. But the defense is about to take a big step back, given the offseason that they had. So now we're going to see the real Ravens. And Kyle was specifically digging into check out. He's going to have an article out on Roto World on this, but he was looking at kind of their pace of play and pass rate over expected when they were trailing by 1 score.
Yeah.
Which they really didn't do a lot, but when they were in those situations, they were aggressive. And if you just look at, you don't have to slice it like that either. Like, just look at their pass rate over expected in all situations over the course of the year, they were positive. This is moving from Greg Roman super conservative offense to actually an offense that plays fast and passes more than you would expect.
Yeah.
If the expectation is you're down, you should pass, and they're passing more than they expect, we might finally have volume in Baltimore. Finally.
Yeah.
And if we do, obviously I'm in on Mark Andrews, but Zay Flowers just had a pretty good rookie season, actually. And so if this dude's getting open and there's actually some decent volume here, and there, as much as I would like Rashad Bateman to be one of these later career breakouts, not a ton of target competition from the other wide receivers, like kind of true number 1 wide receiver potential, second year breakout potential, and offense has a lot more passing volume potential. Flowers, I don't really get why people aren't excited. I mean, you can sit there and take him at the end of the third pretty much whenever you want.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And I don't even know that you need a ton more passing volume to make him worth this price. If he can consolidate some of the targets that we're going to like, I don't even know who they were throwing to else last year. Yeah, right. Aguilar, I guess Beckham for some of the season. I don't know.
Beckham.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely a path for him to improve his target share a little bit. And if like you're suggesting or Kyle's suggesting they might have more volume, then yeah, there's an easy path to him being a top, certainly at least a top 12 wide receiver, probably much better.
Yeah, and I mean the his rookie season wasn't amazing, but it was like he was a first round pick who got on the field right away and then played well. And so that's like we're normally excited about that guy. I think in some ways like Flowers is probably like he probably would have been a 4th or 5th round pick in a lot of other years, and he's getting pulled up by the kind of wide receiver inflation that's hit all wide receivers. But he's one of these dudes. I don't mind. Like he would have been a smash in the 5th round 2 years ago.
Yeah,
like, I just think absolute have to be drafting this guy there. The fact that we have to pay late 3rd round prices to me is like, okay, I'm good.
Right. And when you say, it wasn't amazing, I think, partly that's in comparison to what a lot of the other rookies did last year. Like when you compare him to what Puka did, to what Jaden Reed did, to what Tank Dell did, like then you're saying, oh, he was a little bit lower compared to these guys. But I mean, when you take in, he still had 26 points, fantasy points over expectation. 3 wide receiver 1 performances from week 12 on, and including another one that was 22 fantasy points, but only a wide receiver 2 level. But so, yeah, he's, he ended the season a lot stronger than he started it. He was efficient. He's clearly the wide receiver 1 in an offense that is going to be able to put up points, that's going to be able to move the ball. I mean, I think we could be looking back on round 3 as just being a steal. I mean, it's hard to be a steal in round 3, but really,
I mean, you can be if you're a breakout 2nd-year receiver. Those guys are the guys who can be steals. I mean, those guys can be steals in round 2.
Yeah.
I would maybe float Devontae Smith is a comp of sorts. Like he had 1.73 yards per route run as a rookie. Zay Flowers was at 1.72. Very, very similar efficiency. Yeah. And then Smith, with AJ Brown going there, put up 2 yards per route run in his 2nd season. He was at 1.91 last year. Obviously, a really good young wide receiver. Flowers, has the potential. Like Andrews is sort of the Brown, I guess, but he's not going to be as target dominant as AJ Brown. So you've got the potential for Zay Flowers to be, taking that next step like Smith did, and doing it where he's maybe got a little bit higher target share compared to the next guy on the team. So, that's like I guess I don't know. I think like people just haven't. I am struggling to like understand it, I guess. Like this dude could be compared to like Tank Dell, right? Tank Dell has flipped him in underdog ADP, and you highlight Tank Dell as another target here. 81 open score, 59 yak score, 45 or 59 catch score, 45 yak score. And so we're betting on the ability to get open, and maybe he runs a little hotter on yak, that kind of thing. But and I'm in on that. But I'm dealing with Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. And in Baltimore, I'm dealing with Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman. Like, there's just such a clearer path to like, if this dude is awesome, he's hitting in a huge way. And Dell can be awesome and like, it'll be a good season. He's not going to fail if he's awesome. He's going to be great. He's going to put up some huge weeks. But I don't know. I don't understand why Dell has flipped Flowers, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, certainly you have a much higher expectation for volume in Houston, but I think, you brought up the Devontae Smith comp, and I think that's a good one because in Smith's 2nd year, it wasn't like he started earning a lot more targets. I mean, a lot of his improvement was in efficiency, and he was just doing more with his targets. So there is an aspect in which you can see kind of a secondary breakout from Flowers looks like just a lot more efficiency on a few more targets. So you don't even need to see a huge spike in targets for him to outplay his ADP. And
But what if
at
we
the
get
same
one
time,
anyway?
right? Yeah, at the same time, there's a lot of potential for one. So, yeah, I mean, I'm still bullish on Dell, and I think there's probably a way that all three, Collins and Diggs and Dell, have like amazing seasons in
Right.
Houston.
Especially in best ball, where we can actually
Yeah,
benefit from the rotating spike weeks.
sure.
Yeah, I'm in on Dell. Like I take Dell, but I take more Flowers than Dell. You know.
Yep.
Pickens is a guy I've struggled to get fully on board with. People started to get really, really excited. I thought he would eventually be a 3rd round pick. The Aiyuk stuff kind of dampened the enthusiasm, but I think eventually he'll probably rise up again. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes the market's weird where sometimes like it's like the Eye of Sauron kind of thing. They're like, Pickens is the dude. And then like they got distracted. Like, I don't know if they were come back to steaming Pickens back up, but it might be like Terry McLaurin now or whatever. But but you know, at the late 3rd round, early 4th round kind of price, I was nervous. I've gotten him in the 5th several times over the last couple days. Love that.
Yeah.
He jumped up a ton in open score from year 1 to year 2.
Right.
But he fell in catch score. His profile is pretty interesting.
It is. It's kind of the opposite of what you'd expect, where he has this amazing catch score season, but it seems like is struggling to get open. And I mean, last year I wrote about this, and it was interesting because Deontay Johnson was the hero for open score for a long time, and still has one of the best open score seasons, or maybe multiple of the best open score seasons. Yeah, but struggled with catch score and yak score.
Everything else.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He could only get open. Pickens could only make difficult catches, when the ball was thrown up his way. And then, you have this season where he kind of comes down in catch score and his open score looks pretty good. And I mean, I guess all you're hoping for is that he can kind of combine those two things. Like in 2024, you get an amalgam of his 2022 and 2023 seasons. And I don't know if that's asking too much for him when you don't have Deontay Johnson taking pressure off the defense, when you don't, I mean, it's not like his quarterback situation is getting worse. It's, if anything, it might be better. I don't know. It's hard to say. Yeah. But,
I think it is better.
Yeah.
I don't think Kenny Pickett's going to win the backup job in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not kidding. I think he's not favored to win the backup job.
Yeah, that might be right. Yeah, so I mean, his quarterback situation is probably better. His offensive coordinator is probably worse for him anyway. So there are definitely like competing things. Yeah, maybe not. I don't know.
Canada's not great.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, Pickens was somebody that I was really bullish on going into 2023. Because of his huge explosion in that 1 week, was it 15 or 16? One of those weeks.
Yeah, I think 16. I can't remember. Yeah.
One of those weeks he had like 50 points. So like just on the basis of that week, he did enough to count.
I think it was 15 because I think it was the same week as Florida. Yeah.
I think that's right. Just on the basis of that, he did enough to hit the 200-point threshold and count as a hit in all the breakout stuff.
Yeah.
Even though if you owned him last year, it was painful.
Right.
Until
it wasn't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
If any of your Pickens teams were still alive in week 15, then
I know the back weighted production seems so fun right now, but like back weighted means it's not going to be so good early.
There were so many teams when I'm looking at this Pickens line in week 15, and I'm like going through, okay, yep, he's on that team that didn't make the playoffs, that team that didn't make the playoffs. Like, come on.
He got a team or two through for me, and I didn't even have that much. So
nice.
Those week 15 spike weeks are pretty good.
Right.
So the problem is now, I mean, we talk about volume, like there's just me low passing volume, and in Pittsburgh. We can count on that. We can count on that as much as we can count on anything in football. But target competition is like potentially exceptionally weak because Pat Freiermuth doesn't necessarily have an every down role now.
Right.
He might get rotated. You know how Arthur Smith's going to do this. He's going to what's Darnell Washington.
Right.
You know.
Yep.
He's going to be out there blocking and stuff. He's going to have him on play action. They're going to run 13 personnel, and then Freiermuth's going to be on the sideline. Like, he's going to have extra offensive linemen out there running routes. Like, it's going to be ridiculous, but it all sets up pretty well for if you have one target dominant receiver, like AJ Brown was in an Arthur Smith offense, it can work. And I would say Pickens is more AJ Brown-esque than Drake London-esque. Drake London, I think, is kind of more of a possession receiver. Like, he's such a better fit for this offense with Kirk Cousins than he is with an Arthur Smith kind of big play explosive offense. But Pickens could fit that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's exactly right. And I mean, even with London, like, the problem was never really about earning targets. It was about maybe the quarterback play wasn't there. Some bad.
It was not.
Yeah, some bad touchdown luck was a lot of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I read somewhere that he had like 13 expected touchdowns and only got 4 of them or something. I don't know. So, I mean, you expect basically his season should have been a lot better, and it wasn't necessarily the fault of, there weren't enough plays schemed for him, although that's probably true too, but that wasn't entirely the reason. So I think you definitely could see an
there weren't enough plays schemed where a drop back occurred.
There you go. That's it. Yeah, you definitely could see a situation in which Pickens is earning the targets. I think it might be problematic that, like, he's the only really good receiver there. And I mean, I think there might even still be questions about how good he actually is at getting open.
Right. Right.
So there's, I do have some, I'm always skeptical of buying players who are expected to earn a lot of targets in offense that I think will be bad. I think that bet usually backfires. So, from that perspective,
it is a little Sutton-y. It's a little Sutton-y.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking back to, like, oh man, what was that? There was that year that Pierre Garçon was on the 49ers. And everybody was all over him because there was nobody else there. And it's like, well, do you really want, 150 inefficient targets from Pierre Garçon? Probably not.
Where are you at on McLaurin? Because we're recording this after the Dotson trade, and I'm anticipating that he'll jump up into the mid-4th at least. Does he qualify that way for you, or are you more excited about Jaden Daniels?
No, I'm definitely more excited about Jaden Daniels. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think McLaurin has shown in the past that he's got some talent to put up efficient numbers.
He's Pickens-esque,
Right. Yeah, those certainly aren't empty targets going to McLaurin.
No.
I mean, I think the main concern with him is probably the age stuff, and also obviously anytime you have a rookie quarterback coming in, that's something. But I'm pretty bullish on Daniels, and I think McLaurin, into the 4th, maybe that's fair for him. I don't know that I'll be drafting a lot there, just because the 4th is a really crowded round for wide receiver targets that I like. So, or that range, kind of late 3rd to early 5th.
Who are you real excited about in the 4th?
I mean, yeah, I guess Dell is now moving up, isn't he?
Dell's in the 3rd, man.
Yeah, right.
I wish he was I guess Flowers is in the 4th.
Flowers is in the 4th. I mean, I think, Rashee Rice's price has come up quite a bit to the point where he's, if he doesn't have any disciplinary thing happening this year at all, he should be a 2nd-round pick.
He's still undervalued. Yeah, for sure.
So I still like Rice. I still think T. Higgins is a good pick.
Okay, yeah, I like Higgins.
Yeah,
Amari goes there. Don't love him.
Right, not Amari. Yeah, I mean, when Dell was going in the 4th, it was a little more interesting. I mean, you also look at like the early third, or the early fifth, rather, not early fifth. Yeah, I guess Jaden Reed's not even in the early fifth now.
It's the late
He's
fifth, early
almost sixth.
sixth. Yeah.
You maybe see Xavier Worthy moving up a little bit, but and I'm chasing him all the way up into the fourth, probably.
I think I am too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Stephon Diggs is like late third, right? He's
Late
not quite
third,
fourth. Yeah.
I know,
So just that whole range from like middle of the third to into the fifth is just there's a lot of wide receiver targets there, and you can't take all of them.
So you're not taking Cooper, and I assume that's in part because you're actually somewhat bullish on Jerry Jeudy. You mentioned him in this article where he has flashed at times really strong open scores. He has 79, which again, like we were encouraged by Pickens taking a step forward. He was at 70 last year. We're encouraged by Zay Flowers. In his rookie season, he was at 76. Tank Dell was the best of all these guys at 81, but Jeudy was at 79 in his second season and then 80 in his third season. So he's flashed serious ability to get open, which fit with what we expected when he was coming into the league. He was the guy, he was the film guy of like, this dude is the best route runner. This guy just gets open, all that. So it's not surprising that he's, flashed really good open scores, but still very encouraging that he's done so. Unfortunately, when he had that 79 open score, he was at a 31 catch score.
Yeah.
He was at 45 the year after. He was at 41 last year. He was at 17 as a rookie. I don't know. At what point would you say, is he like Deontay Johnson? Is he our generation's Deontay Johnson?
Yeah, he certainly
a route runner.
He certainly could be. I mean, in the 11th round, maybe that's okay. Maybe you're happy with paying 11th round prices for Deontay Johnson. One thing, like, this is another case where you look at players who've made the leap, who change teams, and Jeudy is. Deshaun Watson certainly doesn't look the way he did in Houston. I think he's not the same quarterback there, but still probably better than what the Broncos had last year and what they've had for most of Judy's career. So
it's hilarious that he played with the quarterback that was like the worst trade ever until the Deshaun Watson trade.
Right. Yeah.
The two worst quarterback trades ever. He's played with both.
Yeah. I mean, it's I don't know. You get a lot of my favorite guys seem to get the worst quarterback luck, but
yeah.
I mean, he definitely fits that in terms of quarterback change, hopefully, or quarterback improvement expected. Plus, he's one of these guys who came into the league at age 21, who's now changing teams after 4 seasons, going for that 5th-year breakout, which there is a little bit of a spike, and it's the guys who have been around the league who came in as 20-year-olds and played their rookie seasons at 21 who have the highest rate of breaking out in year 5. So there are a couple things kind of coalescing around his profile that make him pretty interesting. And I mean, in the double-digit rounds, it's not that big an investment. So
well, I mean, except we got to take down Tavian Wicks,
Well, right. Take him a little earlier.
He's going about a round ahead at this point.
Yeah.
Well, how do you compare him to? Because the last thing I want to touch on here is the rookies going in the double-digit rounds, and probably the two that jumped out to me as I wrote the article are actually the guys going the earliest of that group. But we have an interesting situation this year where there's like a big group of rookies who've been anointed as the breakout candidates this year. And obviously, we've got tiers within that, where Marvin Harrison probably in his own tier going at the 1-2 turn, Malik Neighbors in his own tier going at the 2-3 turn. Then you go down to your Xavier Worthies. You've got that kind of whole group like Roma Dunze, Lad McConkey, Keon Coleman, Brian Thomas, that whole group.
Yeah.
But after that, and that later group is falling a little bit. but they still all are gone by the early 8th at the latest. Usually they're all gone in the 7th.
Yeah.
After that, it's just like no rookie wide receivers for a long time until you get outside the top 9 rounds. You're in the double-digit rounds. That's when you're starting to see A.D. Mitchell and Jalen Polk. These guys both had good draft capital. Both had exciting elements to their profiles, if holes in their profiles, but holes that are not super dissimilar from the holes in Keon Coleman and Ladd McConkey and Brian Thomas's profiles. Like, they're not, I don't think, dramatically worse prospects than, certainly a Keon Coleman. Like, they're kind of similar in some ways. Like, if you think through the range of outcomes of the prospect profiles, I would put those 3 pretty similar. I'd probably put Ladd McConkey pretty similar to those guys.
Yeah.
But you're getting a huge discount with Mitchell and Polk. I'm targeting both guys in a big way. I'm obviously really, really big. Anyone who's ever heard me talk will know that I'm really into Drake May this year, and you get Polk with the stack with May. It's one reason I'm into him. But just purely, leaving May aside, like, Polk has the potential to step up and be the number 1 in his offense down the stretch. Mitchell, a different case, but he has a skill set that fits really well potentially with the deep ball ability of Richardson. It could be kind of the primary downfield threat down the stretch. So, thoughts on those 2 guys to close things out?
Yeah, that's a good contrast, because I mean, when you look at someone like Polk and you compare to McConkey, for instance, I mean, I think the reason people are drafting McConkey is because he's got the opportunity to become the wide receiver 1 in an offense that really doesn't have other receivers. So it's just like by default, he's going to be the number 1 there. Justin Herbert's probably better than Drake May will be in his rookie year, at least to start. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I think from that perspective,
as much as I love May, I'd still say that. Yeah.
From that perspective, you can make a case maybe for having McConkey ahead of Polk. On the other hand, I think Polk probably has a slightly better prospect profile. I think, I definitely think that they should be going closer together where they are, because it's the same type of bet. And,
Keon Coleman's a similar type of bet too.
Right.
He's with Josh Allen.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
I like that part better. But like, it's just guy who I don't fully believe in can consolidate targets if he's good.
Right. Yeah. Keon Coleman is interesting because he wasn't that good at Florida State. Like, he was pretty underwhelming in terms of production, but he is only 21. So you look at that aspect of his profile and say, okay, maybe this is a guy who could actually do something in an offense with Josh Allen. I'm expecting Dalton Kincaid to probably be a first rounder next year. So I don't know that there's going to be much room for Coleman after that, but that's a totally different story. But yeah, I mean, that's the same kind of bet, right? That these rookies that you don't know a lot about, that have some red flags in their
strength of the bet, and there's the type of bet.
Right.
You can tell, like, the pushback would obviously be like Drake May versus Josh Allen. That's not the same type of bet, but it is the same overall type of bet. Rookie enter situation where you can consolidate targets with a profile that we don't fully believe in with 2nd-round draft capital, right? That's the bet. Now, how strong is the bet? Josh Allen versus Drake May. Josh Allen's a lot stronger.
That's pretty strong. Is it strong enough to justify a 5-round difference, 6-round difference? Maybe in Josh Allen's case. Probably not in Justin Herbert's case.
Right. And to me, I'm drafting Coleman.
Yeah.
And I'm drafting McConkey. I'm not saying those guys are bad picks. I am saying I think Jalen Polk is potentially an amazing pick. Especially in best ball tournaments, where we know that these later round rookies, these cheap rookies, provide really like league winning, tournament winning outcomes. Because, and this is what I wrote about in my article, when you look at the wide receiver hits that occur in the top 10, the top 100 picks, the wide receivers who are veterans, who are hits, who have above average advance rates in that range, are producing really efficiently. I believe at 2.17 yards per route run. When you look at the rookie wide receivers who hit in those top 100 picks, they were less efficient actually. They had 1.93 yards per route run.
Yeah.
But then when you drop past the top 100 picks, that's where you get that's where it starts to be really interesting, because you see that the veteran wide receivers drop off significantly in efficiency, and the rookie wide receivers don't. That goes to 1.59 yards per route run for the veterans and 1.84 for the rookies. And then the veterans drop off significantly when you get to the late rounds, 150 plus. And the rookies actually don't drop off at all. They go, I'll share the chart here. They go to 1.93 again, which is because of Puka Nacua. So I ran it again. I took Puka Nacua out.
Yeah.
But but it's still 1.79. So this is probably more true.
Yeah.
Season skewing everything. But it's still, it's crazy that this can exist, right? Where you're getting the rookie hits. Again, these are the hits. This isn't everybody.
Yep.
You need to find a rookie who has a above average advance rate. It really is more descriptive of how these guys are hitting.
Yeah.
But I still think it's helpful to know that rookie wide receiver hits are hitting with efficiency even in the late rounds. Veteran wide receiver hits are typically not. You're getting more like Adam Thielen, Zay Jones. Volume, underpriced volume got you there. Underpriced efficiency can get you there in the late rounds. We saw the fact that Puka exists is insane, but it's just a more extreme version of a trend that already existed, where these guys, the late round rookie wide receiver hits are more efficient than the mid round, or the 101 to 150, the early late rounds, let's say. They're more efficient than those veteran hits. So this is where we want to, I think, be realizing the takeaway to me is we don't know how good these guys are when they're rookies. And let's use that to our advantage.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. And you can go back, like Puka obviously is an outlier, but you can go back a few years and find AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson in their rookie years. They were going after pick 150, I'm sure. I say that without looking it up, but they were definitely late round picks, and it's impossible to get that profile that late anymore.
Yeah.
In underdog anyway. But still, this is a long-term trend, I think.
Right. And the takeaway for me is, like, I actually am not sure if, like, Brian Thomas is overpriced. I think if you're looking for advance rate, he's overpriced. Brian Thomas at this point, because, like, again, I'll just pull this up. The veteran hits here. Yeah. The veterans who produce above average advance rates are more efficient. So we're good at the guys who we think are good, who are veterans. We're usually right.
We're right about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we've seen them in the NFL, so we know that they're good. Right. But then we're also good at knowing who's not good.
Right.
So when you go into the double digit rounds, you're probably taking a guy who isn't good unless he's a rookie, in which case maybe he's good.
Yeah. And these veterans in the top 100 would include a lot of guys who, like, are coming off a really good rookie season and now are year two. We're expecting huge breakouts. That's why they're in the top 100, and oftentimes they deliver, right?
Right. Oftentimes they deliver, and again, these are the hits. So there's lots of busts, who don't deliver.
Yeah, right.
But when they deliver, they really deliver. And if you're saying, I'm forgoing the opportunity to take, like a wide receiver in at the 2-3 turn, right? There's going to be a guy at the 2-3 turn who absolutely smashes, a veteran wide receiver who has like 2.5 yards per route run and is the dude, right? There's just so many guys going in that range. Neighbors, like, is he overpriced? From an advance rate perspective, he probably is. From this dude might be really good and his production is more likely to come at the end of the season. I don't know if he's over. I actually don't know if Neighbors is overpriced. I hope not. I am taking him.
Yeah, right.
But I feel less confident in that kind of type of play, I think I am sacrificing something when I take these. When I take Xavier Worthy, I think I'm sacrificing something at this point. I think I'm sacrificing a little advance rate for the hope that he is just an absolute smash with Mahomes down the stretch.
Yeah.
And that more than makes up for in these best ball tournaments. Like, it's not even close. It makes up for it and some. But I feel pretty confident that if we can still get guys with good profiles outside the top 100 picks, that they have to be priority targets. And that's, to me, A.D. Mitchell and Jalen Polk. I've got issues with both profiles, but like, they're still pretty good profiles. They got the draft capital. There's a way to see the upside with both guys, right?
For sure. Yeah, I like Mitchell a lot. I'm not a huge believer in Michael Pittman to be as dominant with the targets in that offense. So I'm drafting Mitchell and I'm drafting Josh Downs quite a bit because I think both of them have chances to kind of ascend in that offense. Mitchell obviously was, kind of outplayed Xavier Worthy last year at Texas. Somebody that, Worthy we're happily drafting in the 4th round. And that's not only because of his speed, but also because of his early production in college. And he's probably really good, but Mitchell might also be really good based on when they shared the field.
I tell you what, if Xavier Worthy's a star, it would be strange if Worthy wasn't, or if Mitchell was not good.
Right.
Like he was able to come in and immediately joining the team, right? He comes from Georgia, joins Texas, and has a big role in that offense right away. If both of them are terrible, that would make sense. But if Worthy's awesome, the fact that Mitchell came in and had a big role and was getting a lot of the downfield stuff that had gone to Worthy the year before, that it would just be strange if, it'd be a very weird thing for a coaching staff to do to deploy them like that if one of them is a star and one of them can't play.
Yeah.
And Mitchell doesn't have this type of like Troy Franklin-y profile where it's not going to translate. Like, if he's good, it's going to translate. He's got the size, he's got the speed.
Right.
He can be moved around. I mean, they're using him a little bit in the slot and everything. So I'm I don't know. We do know that these teammates are somewhat correlated to one another.
Yeah.
They were only teammates for a year, right? But still, there's something to that. If we're going to be betting this heavy on Worthy, that would be a reason to at least keep the light on for Mitchell.
Definitely. And you know who was better than both at Texas? Jatavian Sanders, in terms of yards per route run, actually led the team.
Do I have to be in on Sanders?
Is that why we're not drafting Xavier Legette? Actually, I am drafting him, but
I am drafting him too. I will note that I don't feel good about it.
Yeah.
But I am doing it.
Yeah.
I am doing it. He's so cheap. I feel like you almost have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right.
I think Sanders is a guy I want a little bit of exposure to in the very last round as well.
I can see it. I mean, I don't know. My thing with Sanders is that the thesis of the play was, look, he didn't have that much production, but this dude is really athletic and he's going to get drafted in the 2nd round. And then he wasn't athletic and fell to the 3rd.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, you kind of blew up my whole case for this guy.
And went to the Panthers.
Yeah, went to the Panthers and doesn't seem to have established himself as a starter so far. So I've had a hard time. I'm more open to him in manage where I can just cut him if it's nothing. But yeah. I'm glad you mentioned him, because if we are betting, I mean, it's the same exact argument. If we're thinking,
right,
especially if these two guys are good, it would be
right
a little weird if Sanders wasn't, at least capable.
Obviously on lower volume, but I think it's significant that he was more efficient in the same offense.
Yeah. Although, I mean, A.D. Mitchell's yards per out was so bad that more efficient doesn't mean a ton.
Yeah.
All right, Blair, let's get out of here. Tell the people about what you got going on at RotoViz. I think you had an article out today, right?
Yeah, I had an article out this morning. I'm hoping to dig into some of the running back breakout stuff now. So nice. looking at some of the factors that help us predict running back breakouts, when they're most likely to happen, when, what kinds of players tend to break out in different years because it is a little bit different. And so that should be coming out. I mean, one came out already, and then I'll have a few more pieces on that over the next few days. And we've got Sean posting his 0 running back candidates right now. I think we'll have part 3 up tonight or maybe tomorrow morning. Nice. So definitely keep an eye out for that. A lot of great work going on RotoViz.
Now. Check it out. I'm also transitioning over to running backs now. I'm writing up the legendary running back scenarios for this year.
Nice.
Finished up Breece Hall's yesterday. Going to be diving back into those today. And that article I always throw out free on the site. So if you're, make sure you check out. I'll obviously let people know once it's published, but always a fun one. Travel to the future, see the exact scenarios where these guys deliver these legendary, earth-shattering, season-winning seasons. So that'll be out pretty soon. But best ball rankings updated every day. Dynasty rankings updated every week. LegendaryUpside.com. Check it out. Thanks again, Blair, and we'll see you guys later.